The following program has been pre-recorded, so please don't call in at this time. If you wish to participate in the program, tune in at 5 p.m. every Wednesday for A Pause for Thought on Baton Rouge Community Radio. Good evening, fellow humans. This is Wayne Parker with A Pause for Thought on Baton Rouge Community Radio, 96.9 FM here in Baton Rouge. This is a live call-in show. You can call in, and you are encouraged to do so. 225-343-9927, 225-343-9927. We try to keep this as a thoughtful forum for thoughtful people, so the only rule for calling in is that you do so respectfully and voice your comments as opinions or just general knowledge. We don't need any rants on tonight or on this show. Anyway, our topic for tonight is rap and hip-hop, what they are, where they came from, and what differences there are between them. And we have a local artist, Abel Thompson, with us, who's a relatively young, intelligent man, future culinary artist, I believe, right? Okay, but good evening, Abel.
How you doing? Nice to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you here, too. And the reason I invited Abel on was because, well, Abel, I'll just tell you straight up, you played, you did some hip-hop, or you did rap at the Unitarian Church a ways back, and that's our background there, Abel's selection. But let me see. I'm trying to find my questions now. All right, you and a couple of friends performed some songs at the church, as I mentioned. How did you get into performing music, and what exactly was the type of music you got into initially?
I mean, it's always been hip hop. I've been a fan of hip hop since as long as I can remember. I mean, I remember my daddy putting me on to artists like Run DMC, Salt and Pepper, Fresh Prince, back when I was like 5 years old. And matter of fact, I have a home video of my first birthday party. My brothers breakdancing to Doves Cry by Prince.
Wow.
So, I mean, it's always been around me.
Okay, but you said hip-hop. I thought you guys sang rap that Sunday.
Yeah, well, hip-hop, I mean, rap is part of the culture of hip-hop. When you talk about hip-hop, it's really a culture, and it has four artistic elements: graffiti art, DJing, scratching and mixing, which is basically the foundation of hip-hop music. It gives the soundtrack. Rapping, which is the lyrical side of hip-hop, and then the breakdancing, which is the dance.
Okay, so rap is the lyrics?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, because I thought that hip hop was born of the culture of the poor inner cities.
Yes, sir.
But okay, so it's just the methods, the musical methods, is what it is, but then the lyrics. Okay, so they are tied together.
They are, yes, definitely,
okay,
most definitely.
Yeah, you may laugh at this, but I went online and did a search for hip hop to learn a little bit about it, because hearing some of the lyrics of the music you sang at the church that time and tipped me off that this stuff is deeper than I'd realized, and we'll talk more about those lyrics in a minute. But I went online and found Encyclopedia Britannica, of all things, right? I didn't really pay attention to the source until after I took the notes, but then I saw that. It's like, oh, isn't that ironic? But what they said was that hip-hop originated in 1973 in the South Bronx.
Yes, sir.
And it's what they said here, their words, predominantly African-American, economically depressed South Bronx. Mm-hmm. And that's just, and actually it says in another article I have here that it began at the founding father of hip-hop's sister's birthday party. He performed the music there. It was Clive Campbell, and who went by DJ Kool Herc. Yeah, so you know him. Cool.
Yes, sir. He was actually a Jamaican immigrant.
Yes.
That brought that, and there was another culture in Jamaica that predates hip-hop. So he brought that to the South Bronx, and he was the first one that's credited with having, like you said, his sister's birthday. He was the first one that's credited with having a hip-hop party.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and he developed the techniques. He was the one, I think, or I forget now if it was him, but developed the idea with the two turntables and all that. And
But it was a collective, I believe, of many different DJs at that time, and each DJ. I mean, that's the beauty about the culture and about the music. Period. Is that each person that participates in the music or in the culture, they add something new to it, and it progresses over time.
as long as, yeah, and we'll get into that too, as long as it's not been corporatized or anything like that, like all music ends up being anything popular. But I got to thinking about it, the fact that you said the lyrics are, rap is cultural, it speaks the culture there. Is that kind of like the blues were, or
Yes, definitely.
or the old slave songs? It was
Definitely.
people in a bad situation with no apparent way out. They just use music to convey that, or
Yeah, hip hop music is definitely a folk music.
Yeah.
In origin, definitely. It's before the mid '80s. I mean, it was pretty much relegated to the South Bronx and Queens, New York City, and it spread from there. So yeah, in the first 10 years of its existence, it was definitely a very specific demographic.
okay, that made me. One thing I wondered about reading this stuff that that it all originated in the South Bronx. Is there no record of any other kind of music that started elsewhere in poor inner cities that just didn't take off? Have you ever thought about that or encountered it?
That's a very good question.
Yeah, it couldn't have been just the South Bronx where people
Right.
did
Well,
music. But
I know they did like house music and like electronic music and like California, and other places, Midwest, but I don't think it took on a life of its own like hip hop did.
yeah, well, yeah, and plus too, once any original genre, I think that's I'm using the right word, takes grows legs and takes off, all the other young people are going to imitate that and use that as the medium. I mean, what happened with rock and roll and everything else, So that may be just what it was, The hip hop of the South Bronx got noticed, got on the air, and bingo, it exploded everywhere. But now it says here, and I think you said too, it's predominantly African American.
Yeah.
But there are some popular white hip hop artists, are there not?
Oh yeah. I mean, Eminem is probably the most famous. He's one of the greatest rappers ever to do it.
Really?
And he's amazing. I mean, his cadence, his lyrics, his way he uses his syllables. He's technically one of the most technically sound rappers ever to do it.
Wow. Okay.
But even in the early days, it wasn't just African Americans. I mean, if you look at the racial makeup of the South Bronx, you had a lot of Haitian immigrants, Puerto Rican immigrants, Dominican immigrants, West African immigrants.
Right.
So and like I said, DJ Kool Herc was a Jamaican immigrant himself.
Okay,
So-
but they were all non-white.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
And that was the thing I was wondering about is, are white hip hop artists considered legitimate? Have they suffered this in the same way in the same cultures, or has hip hop expanded past that now? Or
I mean, if you want to talk about like b-boys or graffiti artists, there's a lot of. I mean, I'm not an expert on that field, but I mean, I know there's a lot of prominent white b-boys,
Okay.
breakdancers. That's what that is. And graffiti artists, DJs.
now, by graffiti, you mean actual graffiti painting on the walls and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, well, now it's in the studios. Now it's in the
Yeah,
in the art
I want to
shows.
come back to that. I wanted to remind the listeners you're listening to A Pause for Thought. I have Abel Thompson on. We're discussing hip-hop music and rap and similarities and differences between the two. And you can call in at 343-9927, 343-9927. We'd welcome your comments and thoughts. Getting back to the graffiti, that was considered part of hip-hop too, right?
Oh, yes, most definitely. Just the nature of it. A lot of the at that time, a lot of the art programs and after-school programs in that area were cut. So a lot of talented kids didn't have a way to express themselves. They couldn't buy cameras. They couldn't buy, the equipment needed to, instruments, what have you. So they'll use what they had around them. You know what I'm saying? I mean, turntables, records, abandoned buildings, subway cars.
Yeah, okay.
So that's really the essence of the whole culture, that you use what you got.
I remember as a teenager, going through places in Philadelphia. I lived near there, and seeing graffiti on the the train cars going past, you know, and we still see that today. But and it was great stuff. I was always impressed. You know, I couldn't read it, but it was still, it looked neat. You know, and it obviously took talent to do that. And there was a paragraph I grabbed from one of the articles I read, talking about graffiti being a part of hip-hop. That said here, by 1975, youths in Bronx, Queens, and Brooklyn were stealing into train yards under cover of darkness to spray paint colorful mural-sized renderings of their names, imagery from underground comics and television. And that just sounded to me like you mentioned just now, young people in general, of course, trying to be heard and recognized.
Right.
And, of course, in the poorer inner-city neighborhoods, that's even more powerful, because nobody pays attention to those. You know?
Yeah. I mean, if you put your tag on a subway car, it's going all around New York City.
Yeah, and I still see them today.
Everybody gets to see your art, and you get to spread it around like that.
Yeah, and I found it interesting that the police, well, the civil governments in the Bronx and all that in Queens, to combat these things would come in and you know, have undercover cops and all this other stuff, and really try to use force to stop it.
Oh yeah.
And instead of trying to understand it, you know, hey, you're messing up our nice neighborhoods, knock it off, you know, get back where you belong, that kind of thing. But, you know, we've talked a lot, and we seem to be giving a great deal of respect to hip-hop, and I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who are thinking, well, rap is garbage lyrics. Rap is, all we ever hear with rap is violence, vulgarity, dehumanization of women, glorification of killing, you know, stuff like that. And what do you say to that? I mean, what I've seen from what you've shown me and what little bit I've looked up, it's fairly deep, you know, culture stuff.
I mean, I never try to defend rap in that way. There is a lot of rap that dehumanizes women, that glorifies violence, but a lot of it is misunderstood because it's a reflection of violence. A lot of it is a reflection of violence, a reflection of the disrespect that men in general have of women, and it's a mirror to America, to American culture. American culture is sexist. American culture is enamored with violence, enamored with drama. You know, so hip-hop, rap music is no different from American culture, you know. And, you know, a lot of the music, and you have to understand, too, the representation of the culture by mainstream media and the actual culture, there's a loud difference. You know, you have a lot of artists that are underground that don't get hurt as much as the brothers that represented on the radio, and it kind of gives the whole culture a black eye.
Yeah, okay, but, that, you mentioned that when we were talking before the show, how basically hip-hop became corporatized, just like rock and roll and country, western, that sort of thing. All the great country musicians couldn't get a record contract once they came up with this particular format that sold lots of records. And they sold records because they were mostly mediocre, you know. Right. And I guess that's what would happen with hip-hop, is that the records that really get out there are the ones that embolden young black people and scare the heck out of white people. You know, and I guess they're covering as many angles as they can to attract listeners. Is the one I'm wondering about.
Yeah, well,
so we tend to hear, that's all we hear then is that angle of it.
I mean, there was a point in time where the industry didn't really know what to do with hip hop. They just knew that it was growing, and it was growing in popularity, and growing financially. I say if you go back to between '88 and '96. I mean, it was a wide variety of different artists, from your most hardcore artists to your most peaceful, socially conscious artists. You know, you could get an NWA, or you can get a Public Enemy. You can get Brand Nubians, or you can have fun and party with MC Hammer. You know, a wide variety of music at that point in time. Matter of fact, I call those 8 to 10 years the golden age of hip hop is between like 88, 96, 98, depending on. You know, but at one point in time, I kind of mark it with the death of Tupac and Biggie. They learned that drama sells, because after Pac and Biggie died, their album sales went sky high.
Yeah.
So I think the industry learned that, and they started promoting that more and more, and it kind of watered down the music.
Yeah, and speaking of Tupac, I recall when he was murdered, and you know, the news media, of course, I don't think I'd ever heard of him, or not much of him, except maybe the VH1, videos and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But the media were making a big thing about all the people mourning him as one of the great hip hop artists, and I was like, I don't understand. He's just one of these angry black men that curses a lot and says terrible things on his shows,
Yeah.
But you quoted a lyric, or mentioned part of a lyric of one of his songs. You and I were talking about how, we may not be able to change.
Oh yeah.
You know.
Yeah, he said in the interview, he said, "I'm not going to change the world, but I hope to spark the mind that will one day change the world."
Yeah.
And Pac was very influential, and he kind of embodied the whole culture as a whole, because he had songs where he disrespected women, but he also had songs where he uplifted women.
Right.
He had songs where he glorified violence. He also had songs where he denounced violence. He also had songs where he reflected violence. He had political songs. He had songs just to have fun with and, ride to, party to, or whatever. So I think he embodied the culture as a whole. I think that's why he was so influential. And nobody feels the same way all the time. He got a bad rap for being kind of flip-flop and being hypocritical. But nobody feels the same way all the time. And your music is your growth. So
right.
as you grow as a person, you're gonna grow. Your music gonna naturally grow.
Okay, we got a call coming in, Abel.
All right.
Good evening. You're on the air with a pause for thought. May I ask who's calling, please?
This is Bobby Thompson.
Hey, Bobby.
Hey.
Yeah, I was wondering if Abel could speak to hip hop and its relationship to, say, MTV, and its relationship to the rest of the world.
You want to stay on the line for this, Bobby, or you want to?
I'll go ahead and hang up, and y'all can bring that up.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Relationship to MTV. It was a big media in the beginning. At first, they didn't even want rap on MTV, but they at one point in time they just couldn't deny its power.
Yeah,
so,
eventually money's going to talk one way or another, right?
Right. And one of the first hip hop platforms was Yo MTV Raps. So it did big in promoting hip hop.
Okay, and did they
and moving that engine?
Did they show the broader spectrum of the cultural aspects of it?
Oh yeah, it was definitely a I don't want to say grassroots, but they definitely had the freedom to express it in its proper form. And hip hop around the world, man, everybody does it. I mean, everybody's the culture's taken over.
Go ahead, finish your point, but
because I mean, anywhere they have conditions with poor people of color, they gravitate to that to the culture of hip hop.
Tell us more about that, because we were talking about that before the show. You said the riots in France in 2005.
Mm-hmm. Gave way to a big rise in hip hop culture in France.
Okay, and you said that those riots were based on a Rodney King type beating by the police.
Well, actually, a shooting.
A shooting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And of course, we don't hear anything about that in American media. No. And really, that's one more reason why the hip hop artists get out there and sing it, because that's really the only voice they have.
And that's another thing about hip hop. It's almost like the news from the ground floor. It's the stories that aren't being told by the media, aren't being told by the news.
Yes.
So that was the big thing when it spread across the country in the mid '80s. It was like a guy from the Bronx can communicate with a guy in L.A. Can communicate with a guy in Chicago, can communicate with a guy in New Orleans, and they all can share their stories through this culture.
Yeah. Speaking of that, I did find a song. I don't know how you're going to react to this, because I deliberately withheld it from you before the show. But
okay.
I'm sure you've heard of the song "Cop Killer."
Yeah, Ice-T.
Body Count. Well, Body Count. What was?
Yeah, Body Count was his band, but it was.
Oh, that was his
Ice-T.
band. I know Ice-T.
Yeah.
Okay, in 1992.
Mm-hmm.
And it created an outrage. All the comfortable people in the country, predominantly white, were outraged by it and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to read the first verse. But when I read this stuff, I'm like, this is what the guys were living. And actually, that's what I was going to bring out your point too. You mentioned when we discussed the show a ways back that the vulgarity and stuff that really, really, negative, for lack of a better word on the spot here, aspects of hip hop and rap lyrics. that's what the guys singing experienced growing up, and they're singing about their lives growing up, and that's what the kids, these guys, the young people experience as children growing on up. So they're going to sing about that, you know. And of course, yeah, like you said, the media, went off on it. But here's a song. The lyrics here from 1992. Now, keep that in mind, everyone. This was a long time before police brutality was getting the publicity that it does now on the internet.
Was that the same year as Rodney King, 92, or was it 91?
That's too long ago for me.
I think it was 92.
I'm not good on dates, the history, but
right.
I mean, I remember the whole Rodney King saga. And, in fact, your dad and I talked about that last Sunday, and I watched the footage, and I'm like, I can't believe the cops were beating him when he wasn't even trying to get up, you know. But anyway, here's the lyrics that really struck me. Well, part of them anyway. I got my black shirt on, I got my black gloves on, I got my ski mask on. This stuff's been too long. I got my 12 gauge sawed off, I got my headlights turned off. I'm about to bust some shots off. I'm about to dust some cops off. I'm a cop killer, better you than me. Cop killer, the heck with police brutality. I'm editing, of course. Cop killer, I know your family's grieving. Cop killer, but tonight we get even. And when I read that, having learned what I have learned about what goes on, to some extent, I mean, being a middle-class, middle-aged white man, I don't know half of it, I'm sure. But when I read this, I thought, yeah, I can understand a young fella seeing the cops brutalizing his family, his mother, and all the injustices that go on, and I don't mean to attack the cops. Who knows why they're acting the way they are, they got to be negatively impacted by the jobs they have to do and the places they do it.
The stuff they see. Yeah,
and the stuff they see. So, but still, nevertheless, these lyrics sound like a legitimate voice of protest.
Yeah,
and of course, they pressured Ice-T, I guess, he withdrew it from the market. He took it off. But instead, we should have looked into it. This should have been an inspiration to
her. Before Cop Killer came out, they had F the Police by NWA. And that was actually the chant that people were saying during the L.A. riots after the Rodney King incident. But I mean, that's been going on. I mean, you had the riots in Watts in '72 because of the same thing. So that's been going on for years. So what you have is this powder keg of citizens that are tired of it, and that the music expressed that at that time. And I mean, you got to understand that this, '92. I mean, you're in the middle of the crack epidemic. You're in the middle of the war on drugs. So, I mean, you're having batarams being ran through people's houses just to find a couple ounces of dope.
Yeah, and kids getting stopped for no reason.
Kids getting stopped on their way home from school. Just getting the book sack searches if they can't have a book sack on without, So, I mean, the climate in that, especially in that area, because Ice-T's from South Central as well. So the climate in that area at that time was really intense.
Yeah.
To say the least.
Go ahead.
I was just saying it's really intense to say the least.
Yeah, I'll say. But my thing was, I mean, I was a white guy watching mainstream media. That was my only source of information on that stuff. And we heard it again. Of course, this time I knew better with Ferguson, Baltimore. And I would tell people that were outraged, they're acting like animals, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, hey, they deal with this stuff all the time, and we don't know about it.
I mean, you had Baltimore, Ferguson, Staten Island. This is all within a couple of years.
Yeah, but the media don't talk about that. They don't say, hey, look, let's look into this. Maybe there's some reason why this keeps happening. They just demonize the people that do it, and everybody they're satisfied. They've spoken their piece. They feel better, and they let it go. But I think that's true, and that can create, I can see, some terrible frustration and violence and everything else if you're being abused constantly and you have no voice.
Right.
And worse, you see the media, the one institution that could tell your story, is distorting everything deliberately and hiding it.
Exactly.
That's got to be infuriating. You're listening to A Pause for Thought. I have Abel Thompson on tonight. We're discussing hip-hop and rap and the cultural aspects of it. You can call in. We got about 6 minutes left, 343-9927, 343-9927. And getting to the performances you and your friends did at the church, the Unitarian Church. Did you guys have a group name? Or
No. Actually, I work with Taj. And I kind of grew up with Saint Abu. That's Marie's daughter, Marie Flowers.
Yeah, oh, I
daughter.
knew Marie, yeah.
So actually, I got with Sainaboo that morning of the show.
Wow.
We had kind of a problem with the audio. We wanted to sample it in the vocals, and we was having problems that night. So yeah, well, the night before actually. So yeah, I called her the Saturday before the show, and I was like, man, can we get together? So we rehearsed it maybe 15 minutes before church started, and
How about that?
yeah, and then Taj, I work with Taj. He's a younger guy, and we just always used to kick it, talk about rap, and after work and stuff like that. So he's a real talented brother. So I brought him along. I thought it'd be a good experience for him.
Sure, and you know, all three we did a wonderful job. I'm looking here, and I'll show it to you. It says poem number 1. Is that I forget now if it was a poem you read. I know I.
Yeah, it was a poem. It was a poem about my relationship with my father as a kid. You want me to read it?
Sure.
All right. I remember being a kid having a conversation with Pops. I said, Pop, I want to be just like you. He said, son, you better not. I raised you to be something I'm not. The reason why me and your mother give everything that we got. The reason why I got this bad back. The reason why we go without to make sure you never lack. But remember, you're black. So by definition, you can never relax. So pull up your pants, remove that do-rag from under your hat, because cops are giving death penalties for that. At the time, I thought he was hating on my style, not knowing he was up late nights waiting on his child. My return wasn't a certainty, and everything I thought was cool was really hurting me. See, he knew what the streets did, spent his time around street kids. He never faulted them. Matter of fact, he talked to them. But he knew if I wore the same shoes, I'd have to walk in them. That's probably why he never bought me a pair of Jordans. Yeah, the kicks were fly, but my life was more important. But at the time, my mind just wasn't that absorbent, so I thought to myself, man, maybe they just couldn't afford it. I was right. They couldn't afford losing me, nor could they afford letting corporate America make a fool of me. They wanted me to be a well-adjusted human being and know the price of the crown doesn't make me more or less of a king. Conversations with Pops. If I had to choose between being overprotected or neglected, I choose the former before the latter. But see, my Pops, he provided the latter plus the feet to climb it. He gave me the resources and left it up to me to seek the knowledge. Conversations with Pops. And Pop, whether you like it or not, I still want to be just like you, a family man, a stand-up dude, and I thank you for giving me those conversations instead of buying me those overpriced shoes.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. That is, those are powerful lyrics. And of course, I know your father, and he is a really great person. You're both your mother and your father both.
And that just spoke to the fear that a parent has of the kid, that a black parent has of their kid.
Yeah.
In the society, knowing that the way he looked, the way I looked, the way I carried myself, could mean, me getting harmed.
Yeah,
or worse.
I have a friend at the church who's a mother of. She's an African American, and she had. At the time, she had 2 teenage sons, one of whom was of driving age and was getting ready to get his license.
I know you talking about.
Her name's Dawn. We don't need to bring her
yeah.
last name in,
Yeah.
but I heard her speak at the rally for Victor White on the state capitol, and that was the first time this naive white man ever heard the fact
that was a very powerful
that
speech.
she and all black parents, have to teach their children how to be very cautious when they get pulled over by the police because they could get killed.
Right.
And that's horrible for a parent to have to tell their parents that, their children that, because your skin color, you have to be afraid of being killed.
Right. And then my naive kind of resentment towards my father for not buying me the shoes I wanted.
Yeah.
And that's what the poem was, my evolution to understand why he felt the way I was gave me those conversations.
Yeah, you live long enough to learn the lessons. You just reminded me of a story I meant to mention to you. Before the show, I was in New Orleans one Saturday, and when I was going to head home, I thought, well, I'm going to head north on Canal, I think it was, and get on the interstate up a ways. And I stopped in a convenience store. I didn't know it, but it was near a projects or whatever. Mm-hmm. And there was a young black fella, teenager or younger, standing to the side of the door when I came in, and there was a black woman in line. And I went and got my 6-pack for the drive home, and I got in line behind this woman, and I started talking with her. And I said, "Is that your son?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, "I thought so. He looks just like you." And she smiled, and she started talking about him. And she says, "I just hope he doesn't get shot." And she said, "My friend's son was just killed the other day by a gunshot." And, I thought, my gosh, people really have to worry about that every day, and, and we don't hear those stories or, people are judgmental and just say, "Oh, well, it's their own fault," that kind of thing. And, but yeah, it's something that's very real.
That fear is very real.
And I'm very glad to have made your acquaintance here. I'm glad to have had the chance to bring you on the air.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Well, I hope we can have you back and we can talk more. I know you and I have covered a lot of topics just sitting here shooting the breeze.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm going to read some more, look at some documentaries, and we'll have some more topics to talk about.
Definitely need to have a part 2.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely.
No, I really want to, because I want to share, as the people who listen regularly know, I want to share things that we don't hear about elsewhere and that matter. Things that matter and that we need to know about.
Yeah, and shows like this, and even my a friend of mine, Mike T, has a show on the same radio station, from 10 to midnight on Fridays, called the Soul Lab. And shows like this, shows like the Soul Lab, that shine light on stuff that the mainstream media doesn't shine light on is very important. Mike plays underground hip hop, old school hip hop, classic hip hop, not top 40 rap music, and I'm glad that there's medias that genre of music can get exposure, and also satellite radio is really helping the culture.
Good.
Positive parts of the culture get pushed.
And you can live stream this station also. One quick question: are there local venues where people can hear hip hop and meet the artists? You got to go.
I can't think of any off the top of my head.
Okay, well, I'll find out for my benefit. That's fine. Okay, well, we got to go. Thank you for listening. This is Wayne Parker with a pause for thought on Baton Rouge Community Radio, 96.9 FM in Baton Rouge. We've been talking with Abel Thompson and discussing hip-hop and rap and all the cultural aspects. And anyway, we thank you for listening, and you have a good night.